Fleeing from the relentless pursuit of King Saul, David found refuge in a place that seemed to fit his desperate situation, the Cave of Adullam. The name itself, Adullam, means refuge or hiding place. This wasn't a small, cozy cavern. It was a vast, sprawling complex of limestone caves, a natural fortress carved into the hills of Judah. Imagine a labyrinth of dark, damp passages, echoing with the drip of water and the scuttling of unseen creatures. It was a place of isolation, a place to be forgotten. In the heart of this gloomy stronghold, David sat alone by the flickering light of a small fire. The flames danced across his face, revealing a man worn down by fear and exhaustion. His clothes were tattered, his beard untrimmed. He was a shadow of the triumphant hero who had once defeated Goliath. The polished armor and the cheers of the crowd were distant memories now. All he had was his harp, its strings a familiar comfort in his hands. He began to play, not a song of victory, but a mournful, haunting melody that filled the empty space around him. The notes spoke of loss, betrayal, and a deep, gnawing loneliness. Each chord was a question hanging in the air. Had God abandoned him? Was this to be his end? A forgotten fugitive in a dark hole? As the sad music drifted towards the mouth of the cave, it mingled with the night air. And then something changed. Shadows began to shift and move at the entrance. At first, it was just one or two figures, silhouetted against the pale moonlight. Then more appeared, and more, a slow but steady stream of men emerging from the darkness. David stopped playing, his hand hovering over the strings, his senses on high alert. Were these Saul's soldiers finally cornered him? He reached for his sword, his heart pounding in his chest. But as the men drew closer, stepping into the dim firelight, David saw they were not soldiers. Far from it. These were the broken men of Israel, the outcasts and the forgotten. Their faces were etched with hardship and worry. Their clothes were rags, their bodies thin from hunger. These were men who had lost everything. They were farmers whose lands had been seized, merchants who had fallen into crippling debt, men who had spoken out against the king's tyranny and were now marked for death. They were the distressed, the indebted, and the discontented souls of the kingdom, all drawn to this cave, drawn to the one man who understood their plight better than anyone. They had heard the whispers that the great hero David, the giant slayer, was himself a fugitive, and in his story they saw a reflection of their own. Slowly they gathered around the fire, their eyes fixed on David. There was no judgment in their gaze, only a shared sense of desperation and a glimmer of hope. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sounds were the crackling fire and the heavy breathing of 400 weary men. They had come from all corners of Judah, each with his own tale of sorrow and injustice. They were a motley crew, a band of misfits united by their shared misery. They had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. The world had cast them out, and in this desolate cave they had found their last resort. From the crowd, a large, powerfully built man stepped forward. His face was weathered and scarred, the look of a man who had seen his share of hardship and wasn't afraid of a fight. This was Joab, a man of fierce loyalty and even fiercer temper, David's own nephew. He looked David straight in the eye, his voice rough but steady, filled with a raw determination that cut through the silence. "We have nowhere else to go, David," he said, his words echoing the thoughts of every man present. "The king hunts us like dogs. Our families are threatened. Our homes are gone. We are ghosts in our own land." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "But we will not break. We have heard of your courage, of your faith. You are the only hope we have left. We will follow you." As Joab spoke, a murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Heads nodded. Fists clenched. A new spirit began to stir in the cave, chasing away some of the despair. It was the spark of defiance, the birth of a brotherhood forged in the crucible of suffering. These men were no longer just a collection of individuals drowning in their own sorrow. They were becoming something more. David looked out at the faces before him, 400 men, a ragtag army of the dispossessed. He saw their desperation, yes, but he also saw something else, a fierce, unyielding resolve. He saw fighters. He saw survivors. In their eyes, he saw a reflection of his own struggle, his own defiance against an unjust king. He was no longer just a shepherd boy, a musician, or even a celebrated warrior. He was one of them. Their pain was his pain. Their fight was his fight. A profound shift occurred within David in that moment. The weight of his own troubles began to feel a little lighter, replaced by a new, heavier responsibility. These men were looking to him not just for refuge, but for leadership. They weren't just seeking a fellow fugitive. They were seeking a captain. The self-pity that had clung to him like a shroud in the darkness began to fall away. The sad melody of his harp was replaced by a new song, a silent anthem of purpose that began to beat in his heart. He stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate, but full of a newfound authority. His posture straightened, his shoulders squared. The flickering firelight seemed to cast a different kind of shadow, now not one of a man hiding, but of a leader rising. The weariness was still on his face, but it was now overlaid with a steely resolve. He was no longer just David, the refugee. He was David, the commander of the band of brothers. His voice, when he finally spoke, was clear and strong, resonating with a power that filled the great cavern. It was the voice of a man who had accepted his destiny. "Then prepare yourselves," he commanded. The words were simple, yet they carried the force of a trumpet call. Every man stood a little taller, their backs a little straighter. A current of energy, of purpose, surged through the cave. Hope, which had been a flickering ember, now roared to life. "We move at dawn." The declaration hung in the air, a promise of action, a new beginning. They were no longer hiding. They were organizing. They were no longer victims. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Cave of Adullam was no longer a tomb of despair. It was the crucible where an army and a future king were being forged. Welcome back to our journey through one of the most incredible stories of all time. We've just seen David and his men find a fragile moment of peace in the rugged, unforgiving wilderness of En Gedi. But peace, as we know, is a luxury they can rarely afford. Their brief respite is about to be shattered, as the storm they've been running from is about to break right over their heads. Back in the royal court, the air is thick with tension and paranoia. King Saul, a man once chosen by God, is now a shadow of his former self, consumed by a relentless obsession. His every thought, his every waking moment is poisoned by one name: David. News travels fast in a kingdom, and it doesn't take long for whispers to reach the king's ear. Someone, a Ziphite informant perhaps, eager for royal favor, reports David's location. David is hiding in the strongholds of En Gedi, they say, and that's all it takes. The spark hits the powder keg. Saul's jealousy, his fear, his simmering rage, it all explodes. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't deliberate. He acts on pure, raw impulse. Saul musters his army. But this isn't just any army. He handpicks 3,000 of his finest soldiers, the elite of the elite, the best warriors in all of Israel. 3,000 men, a force powerful enough to conquer a small nation, are now being mobilized for a single purpose: to hunt down one man and his small band of followers. Imagine the scene: a column of highly trained soldiers, their armor gleaming under the harsh sun, their spears and swords at the ready, marching into the desolate wilderness. And all for what? To capture a shepherd boy who once served him faithfully. This isn't a military campaign. It's a personal vendetta, a royal obsession of epic proportions. The scale of this response is staggering. It shows just how far Saul has fallen, how completely David occupies his every thought. He's willing to divert the strength of his kingdom, leaving its borders vulnerable, all to satisfy his own ego and eliminate a perceived threat. The journey to En Gedi is brutal. This is not the rolling green hills of Judea. The wilderness of En Gedi is a place of stark, raw beauty and extreme danger. The name itself means spring of the kid goat, a reference to the ibex that leap among its cliffs. It's a land of deep canyons, sheer rock faces, and a labyrinth of caves. The sun beats down mercilessly, reflecting off the pale rock, scorching the earth. It's a landscape that tests the limits of human endurance. For Saul's army, accustomed to more forgiving terrain, this is a grueling march. The dust, the heat, the treacherous footing, it's a nightmare. But Saul drives them onward. His own inner turmoil mirrored by the harshness of the land around him. He is a man possessed. You can almost hear his voice, cracking with a frantic energy, echoing off the canyon walls. Check every crevice, every hole. He is here somewhere. I can feel it. He's not just a king leading a search party. He's a predator on the hunt, senses heightened, every nerve tingling with anticipation and madness. His soldiers, loyal but weary, fan out, their eyes scanning the endless maze of rock and shadow. They are professionals following orders, but even they must be questioning the sanity of this mission. The entire military might of Israel is being used to scour a desert for a ghost. Meanwhile, deep within this very wilderness, hidden from the scorching sun, David and his 600 men are resting. They have found refuge in the cool, dark recesses of a massive cave. This cave is their sanctuary, a temporary haven from the king's wrath and the unforgiving elements. It's a place of shadows and echoes, a natural fortress carved into the heart of the mountain. Here they can catch their breath, tend to their gear, and share what little food they have. For them, this darkness is a comfort. It's a cloak of invisibility that has kept them safe for so long. They are a brotherhood forged in hardship, their loyalty to David absolute. They've given up everything, their homes, their families, their former lives to follow him. They are outlaws, yes, but they are bound by a shared faith in their leader and a shared hope for a future free from his tyranny. As the sun climbs to its peak, Saul's column draws nearer. A scout perched on a high ridge spots a landmark. He scrambles back to the king, pointing ahead. "My king, the sheepfolds are just ahead, and there beside them is a large cave." The sheepfolds are simple stone enclosures used by shepherds to protect their flocks at night. And near these pens is the dark, gaping mouth of the very cave where David and his men are hiding. The two forces, the hunter and the hunted, are now separated by mere yards, completely unaware of each other's presence. The tension is almost unbearable. The fate of two future kings and the destiny of a nation hang in the balance, suspended in the shimmering heat of the En Gedi wilderness. Saul, exhausted by the heat and the intensity of his own rage, calls a halt. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he dismisses his entourage. "Halt the column," he commands, his voice strained. "I need a moment alone." He leaves his guards, his armor-bearer, his entire 3,000-man army waiting outside in the blazing sun. He needs to relieve himself, a simple human need. And the cave, with its promise of privacy and shade, seems like the perfect place. He walks, alone and vulnerable, toward that dark opening. He has no idea that he is about to step out of the light of his own power and into the darkness of his enemy's lair. He believes he is entering an empty cave for a moment of solitude. In reality, he is walking into a trap, not one set by David, but one set by divine providence. The king of Israel, stripped of his guards and his royal authority, is about to put himself completely at the mercy of the man he has sworn to destroy. The hunter is about to become the helpless prey. Saul, weary from the relentless desert sun, steps into the cool darkness of a cave. He's looking for a moment of privacy, a brief respite from his duties. and the scorching heat. He unfastens his royal robe, lays it aside, along with his sword, completely unaware that he's not alone. He's just a man vulnerable, seeking a moment of peace. But deep within the cavern's shadows, eyes are watching. It's David and his men. They've been hiding here, and now their greatest enemy, the man who has hunted them like animals, has just walked right into their trap. The air is thick with tension. You can almost feel the heartbeats of the men hiding in the dark. One of David's top commanders, Joab, his voice a tense whisper, grabs David's arm. He's practically vibrating with excitement. "David, look, this is it. This is the day the Lord spoke of. He promised, 'I will deliver your enemy into your hands.'" Joab is convinced this is divine intervention, a sign from God, the moment they've all been waiting for. Another soldier, his hand already on the hilt of his dagger, chimes in, his voice low and urgent. "One strike, David, just one, and it's all over. The kingdom is yours. The war ends today. No more running, no more hiding." He sees a swift, practical solution, a clean end to a long and bloody conflict. All the suffering, all the hardship could end right here, right now, with a single decisive action. All eyes turn to David. He stares at Saul, who is completely oblivious, his back turned. This is the man who turned his life upside down. The man who was once like a father to him, who gave him his own daughter in marriage, and then, consumed by jealousy, tried to kill him again and again. The man who forced him to live like a fugitive in the wilderness. Every ounce of pain, every sleepless night, every fear he's ever felt, it's all personified in that one man, sitting there, completely defenseless. The weight of the moment presses down on David. His men are looking at him, expecting him to act. The promise of a kingdom, the end of a war, personal vengeance, it's all within his grasp. The temptation is immense, a powerful current pulling him forward. This is more than just an opportunity. It feels like destiny calling his name. David's hand slowly moves to his own knife. His fingers wrap around the familiar grip. The cool metal is a stark contrast to the heat of the moment. He draws the blade. It slides from its sheath with a whisper-soft sound that seems to echo in the silent cave. He begins to move, silent as a phantom, creeping forward through the shadows. Each step is deliberate, measured. He moves closer and closer to the unsuspecting king. The fate of a nation hangs in the balance, held in the palm of his hand, at the point of his blade. Inside the deep, dark cave of En Gedi, a scene of incredible tension unfolds. David is now mere inches from King Saul. He's so close he can probably feel the warmth of Saul's body, hear his steady breathing. Saul, completely oblivious, remains vulnerable, his eyes still adjusting to the darkness. He has no idea that his most determined pursuer is right there, hidden in the shadows, watching his every move. David's men, peering from the deeper recesses of the cave, hold their breath. Their hearts are pounding in their chests. This is it. This is the moment they've been waiting for. The moment of deliverance, the moment of justice. The Lord has delivered their enemy directly into their hands, just as they had hoped. David slowly, deliberately, raises his knife. The polished blade catches what little light filters into the cave, gleaming with deadly promise. His men lean forward, their eyes wide with anticipation. They expect to see blood. They expect to hear the final gurgling gasp of the king who has hunted them like animals. This single act will end their suffering. It will end the constant running, the hiding, the fear. It will secure the throne for David, the man they believe is destined to be king. The air is thick with expectation. The silence is deafening, broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere in the cavern. The entire future of Israel hangs in a single suspended moment. But then, something unexpected happens. David's hand, the same hand that had slain a lion, a bear, and a giant Goliath, begins to tremble. It's not a shake of fear, but of internal conflict. His grip on the knife handle tightens, his knuckles turning white. His face is a mask of turmoil. He stares at the exposed neck of the king, the man who was once his mentor, his father-in-law. The man God himself had chosen and anointed to be king over his people. A war is raging within David's soul. His mind is screaming at him to strike, to end this madness once and for all. His men are counting on him. His own survival depends on it. But his heart, his conscience, is screaming something else entirely. With a shuddering breath, David lowers the knife. His men let out a collective, silent gasp of disbelief. What is he doing? Why is he hesitating? This is not the decisive warrior they know. Instead of plunging the blade into Saul's back, David's movements become delicate, almost gentle. He carefully reaches out and takes hold of the hem of Saul's royal robe. It's a magnificent garment, dyed in expensive purple, a symbol of Saul's kingship, his authority, his divine appointment. David's fingers brush against the rich fabric, a stark contrast to the rough, animal skins he and his men are forced to wear. He is touching the very symbol of the power that has been used to hunt him. With a quick, sharp slice, the sound cutting through the stillness of the cave, David cuts off a corner of the cloth. It's a small, triangular piece. He holds it in his hand, a tangible piece of evidence, but not the kind his men were expecting. He hasn't taken the king's life. He's only taken a fragment of his royalty. He has shown incredible restraint when every instinct for self-preservation and the urging of his followers screamed for violence. He has made a choice, not with the mind of a cornered fugitive, but with the heart of a man who still fears God above all else. This small piece of purple cloth now represents a profound decision, a testament to David's character. Having secured his proof, David retreats. He moves as silently as he came, a phantom melting back into the deeper darkness of the cave. He rejoins his men, who are staring at him with a mixture of confusion and shock. Meanwhile, Saul, having finished relieving himself, stands up. He picks up his robe, completely unaware of the drama that has just unfolded behind him. He doesn't notice the missing corner, the small mutilation to his royal attire. He wraps it around himself, adjusts it, and with the confident stride of a king, walks out of the cave and back into the blinding sunlight, rejoining his 3,000 soldiers, who are waiting to continue the hunt. The irony is staggering. The hunter has just left the lair of the hunted, completely ignorant that his life had been spared by the very man he seeks to destroy. The moment Saul is gone, the tension in the cave breaks. But it's replaced not with relief, but with a palpable sense of frustration and anger. David collapses against the cold, damp rock wall. The strength seems to drain out of him. He's breathing hard, his chest heaving, not from physical exertion, but from the immense emotional and spiritual weight of his decision. He clutches the piece of Saul's robe in his hand, staring at it. But there is no look of triumph on his face. Instead, his expression is one of guilt, as if he has committed some terrible transgression. It's a strange reaction. He spared a man's life, yet he looks like he's the one who has sinned. His second in command, the fiery and pragmatic Joab, can't hold his tongue any longer. He storms over to David, his face contorted in a mask of pure, unfiltered rage and confusion. Why? He practically spits the word out. Why didn't you kill him? The question echoes the thoughts of every man in that cave. It's a logical question. From a military perspective, from a survival perspective, David's actions make no sense. God gave him the perfect opportunity. An unguarded enemy, a hidden location, the element of surprise. It was a gift from heaven. And David threw it away. Joab sees this as weakness, a fatal flaw that could cost them all their lives. He can't comprehend the reason for such mercy. David, still leaning against the wall, slowly lifts his head. His own hand is still shaking, not with indecision now, but with the aftershock of his conviction. He looks at Joab, and then at the other men, their faces a mix of disappointment and bewilderment. He shakes his head, not in defiance, but with a deep, unshakable certainty. His voice is low but firm, filled with a power that silences all argument. "The Lord forbid," he says, his words carrying the weight of a sacred oath. "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed." He holds up the piece of robe. "I will not lift my hand against him, because he is the anointed of the Lord." In that moment, David teaches his men, and us, a profound lesson. He's not just a warrior or a fugitive king in waiting. He is a man of deep faith. His loyalty is not ultimately to his own ambition, his own safety, or even his own destiny. His ultimate loyalty is to God, and since God had placed Saul on the throne, it was God's business, and God's business alone, to remove him. David would not usurp that authority. He would not take matters into his own hands, even when it seemed so easy, so justified. He chose to trust in God's timing and God's methods, no matter how difficult or dangerous that path might be. He understood that how you gain a throne matters just as much as gaining it. He would not build his kingdom on a foundation of assassination and rebellion. He would wait for the Lord. This act of cutting the robe was not an act of cowardice, but an act of supreme faith and self-control. Saul, believing he has finally escaped the immediate threat, begins the trek back to rejoin his army, his mind still reeling from the close call within the dark confines of the cave. The dusty ground crunches under his sandals as he walks, the sun beating down on his royal robes. He is just a few paces from the cave entrance when a voice, clear and strong, echoes from the cliffs above, piercing the stillness of the desert afternoon. "My lord the king." The voice is unmistakable. Saul freezes, every muscle in his body tensing. He spins around, his hand instinctively flying to the hilt of his sword, his heart pounding in his chest. And there, standing boldly at the very mouth of the cave he just exited, is David. Saul's eyes widen in disbelief and fury. He half draws his blade, ready to strike, but something makes him pause. David is not advancing. He is not holding a weapon. Instead, in a gesture of profound respect and submission, David is bowing, his face pressed to the dusty ground before his king. The sight is so unexpected, so contrary to the narrative of a treacherous usurper that Saul has been fed, that it momentarily disarms him. Slowly, David rises, his eyes meeting Saul's across the short distance. His voice rings out again, filled not with malice, but with a desperate plea for understanding. "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Behold, David seeks to harm you'?" Saul stands rigid, his hand still gripping his sword, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and suspicion. How did David get so close? Why didn't he strike? David's words are a direct challenge to the paranoia that has consumed Saul for months. He is forcing the king to confront the very source of his rage, the whispers and lies of his court. David then takes a step forward, holding something up for Saul to see. "Look," he cries, his voice resonating with sincerity. In his hand is a small, familiar piece of fabric, a corner of deep blue cloth, trimmed with the royal tassels. It is a piece of Saul's own robe. The realization dawns on Saul with sickening clarity. That piece of cloth, it could only have been cut while he was inside the cave, vulnerable and unaware. David had been there. He had been close enough to kill him, to end the chase once and for all. A cold sweat breaks out on Saul's brow as the full gravity of the situation sinks in. David continues, his voice unwavering. "This day the Lord delivered you into my hand in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but my eye had pity on you. I said, I will not put out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed." David's words are a testament to his loyalty, a powerful refutation of every accusation leveled against him. He then holds up the piece of robe again, a tangible symbol of his mercy. See, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For by the fact that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you, you may know and see that there is no evil or treason in my hand. I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt my life to take it. With a final dramatic gesture, David tosses the small piece of blue cloth into the air. It catches the wind, fluttering for a moment like a wounded bird before drifting down to the rocky ground between them. The sight of it, lying there in the dust, is a powerful and silent accusation. It speaks of a life spared, of loyalty proven in the most extreme circumstances. May the Lord judge between me and you, David declares, his voice now filled with a righteous power. And may the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. He has made his case not just to Saul, but to God himself, placing his fate and his vindication in a higher authority. For a long moment, Saul just stares at the piece of cloth. It is undeniable proof. The anger, the paranoia, the obsessive rage that has driven him across the wilderness, all of it begins to drain away from him, like water seeping into the dry earth. In its place, a flood of shame and regret washes over him. His shoulders slump. His hardened expression crumbles. His eyes well up, and a great heaving sob escapes his lips. The king, the mighty warrior, begins to weep openly in front of his men. Through his tears, he looks at David, truly seeing him for the first time in a long, long time. The young, loyal shepherd boy he once loved. "Is that your voice, my son David?" he asks, his own voice choked with emotion. The use of the term, "my son," is a stunning admission, a return to the affection he once held. Before David can even answer, the weight of his own guilt becomes too much for Saul to bear. His legs give way, and he collapses to his knees on the hard ground, a broken man. He looks up at David, who still stands at the cave entrance, and confesses his sin. "You are more righteous than I," Saul cries, his voice thick with shame. "For you have repaid me with good, whereas I have repaid you with evil. You have declared this day how you have dealt well with me, in that you did not kill me when the Lord put me into your hands. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him go away safe? So may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day." After a moment, Saul gathers his strength and slowly rises to his feet. He wipes the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand, his demeanor changed. The fury is gone, replaced by a somber, profound realization. He looks at David, and in that gaze there is a final, definitive acceptance of a truth he has long fought against. "And now, behold," Saul says, his voice steady and clear, filled with the weight of prophecy, "I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand." With those momentous words hanging in the air, Saul turns his back on David. Without another word or glance, he begins to march his army away. The soldiers, who had witnessed the entire bizarre confrontation, fall into line behind him, their own minds surely racing with what they had just seen. David watches them go, a silent, solitary figure against the dark backdrop of the cave. Joab, ever the pragmatist, steps up beside him, sheathing his sword with a quiet, metallic scrape. He watches the retreating army, his expression cynical. "He will come back, you know," Joab says, his voice low and matter-of-fact. "He's mad." David doesn't turn his gaze from the shrinking figures of Saul and his army. A small, weary smile touches his lips. "I know," he replies softly, "but today, we survived.